Anin Bojo. I'm Sherry Lawson, host of Indigenous Voices. We're still here. My special guest today is Marsha Shilling, and she's going to tell us all about what she does and why she does it. And she works for a tribal council, so you're going to learn all about those things today. I'd like to welcome Marsha to my show. Hi, Marsha. Thanks for being here.
Hi, Sherry. Thanks for having me.
Could you please introduce yourself in whatever way you think is proper?
Sure. Marsha Shilling Dijnakaz, Njikanin Donjaba, Nigani Maingan Kwe. My name is Marsha Shilling and I'm from Rama. And my spirit name is Leading Wolf Woman.
Whoa, sounds like you're supposed to be leading somebody. Now, you have a job that most of our listeners will have no idea what it is, or even the organization you work for. What is that and why does it exist? So tell us about what your job is, who you work for, and all those kinds of things.
Okay, so I work for the Ogemawahj Tribal Council, and we are located at the old band office in Rama. So Ogemawahj Tribal Council was formed, I think it was about 30 years ago, with the chiefs from around this surrounding area. And we wanted to build capacity within our own First Nations. So we deal with infrastructure, employment and training. We have an energy department. We have a water hub, consultation advisor, and myself, I look after the education department, and my role is education advisor. So what I do is I connect with our 6 First Nations that are involved with Ogemawahj Tribal Council, and we liaison, we facilitate, and we make connection not only with the First Nations, but we also reach out to our partner school boards. So that could be Simcoe County, York Durham. It could be the Catholic school boards, the Kawartha Pine region, and all the way up towards Parry Sound area. So our First Nations comprise of Rama, Scugog, Mississaugas of Scugog Island First Nation, Alderville First Nation, Georgina Island First Nation, Beausoleil First Nation, and Moose Deer Point. So I think those are the 6 that I have listed that we work with on a regular basis.
Okay, so some of those places will be familiar to some of our audience, but most people have never heard of something called Moose Deer Point. That mustn't be a big place, am I right?
No, I think their First Nation, I believe it's no more than 200 people that belong to that membership. So some are very small, and then you have the larger First Nation communities like Chippewas of Rama and Beausoleil, who have over 2,500 members. So there's a huge difference, but we still provide the same services.
Okay, so Ogemawahj is like an association, I wouldn't call it that, an entity that, in your case, looks after education and training, but every First Nation also has money for education and training, am I right? So what kinds of things would you do differently or to augment that?
Okay, so now that the Anishinaabeg education system has come into place and the 5 of our First Nations have signed on to that education system, a lot of the funding will roll into that education system where they will provide the services of, for example, reciprocal education agreements where our students could go, for example, into town to attend school and students could come out to our First Nation. A lot of the education agreements and, for example, special education, monies that would normally flow through here will eventually flow through the AES. So a lot of my initiatives these days are language revitalization. Still consulting, still facilitating, but we are now focused on the reclamation of our First Nation language.
Okay, thank you. Can you give us a little Reader's Digest version of AES?
So AES, I believe, has been in the works since the late 70s. I know that a lot of people, even past employees that have worked with Ogemawahj, have supported the AES education, the Anishinaabe education system, and they are a bigger body, a bigger education body that will be our voice for the First Nations that have signed up with the Anishinaabe education system. So they will speak on our behalf, they will advocate on our behalf, and make sure that First Nation education will earn and hopefully reach the same criteria as, for example, a public school system.
So it sounds like AES was in the works for a long time because the regular education system wasn't meeting the needs of our students. Am I right?
Yeah, wasn't meeting the need, or underfunded, services not provided, services that could be, better enhanced, things like that. Education agreements where our education is inclusive of our culture and our language. So we're working. Those are some of the big goals that we're working towards.
Okay, I know when I worked for the school board back in the 70s, when there was more than one high school in Aurelian, we sent all our kids in town to go to school, of course. This is from Rama. Pretty much every kid that they got from Rama, they put in not the 4-year stream and not the 5-year stream, in the 2-year stream, because they said, these are Indian kids. They're probably not smart enough to get through to grade 12 or 13. We had grade 13 back then. So everybody ended up in special ed. And I remember working in that system saying, wait a minute, these kids shouldn't be in special ed just because they have a band number. So that's probably going back to the 70s. You're talking about the time when education people and the chief said, wait a minute, there's something wrong with this system here. They're not understanding who we are and what we need for education. And when you talk about culture and language, what does that look like in this system then? What do you mean by that?
So what does it look like now? So that we are honoring our Indigenous ways of life. So they will eventually and hopefully honor a student's hunting rights, so that they can leave school for the 2 weeks and go hunting where they need to. They can attend ceremony in different parts of the year if they need to, whether it's spring ceremony, summer ceremonies. That the language, that there is a language teacher that is in the school system, and even like supports that would work in the school system that provide that space for our students, so they feel safe, they feel comfortable, and they gain that confidence to keep going to school, because it's like a culture, it's a total culture difference. So we learn differently. We are hands-on people, we are an oral speaking people, we're kinesthetic people, so we learn that way. So where the culture and language come in, that's where they would excel the most.
Okay, so I think back to those days decades ago too, where they shipped us off to school from the First Nation, the reserve back then, and we had no idea what was going on in school because everything didn't match us. It's like we stood up in the morning and sang a song to the Queen and those kinds of things that just don't match our reality. So, as part of your job or part of tribal council, will there be some learning, some teaching that goes on with the teachers and the guidance counselors in the system where our kids go?
Yes. So as of right now, and from my experience, I'm only 1 year in with this position, but I've learned a ton of the behind the scenes stuff with education. I know that in almost every school, there is an Indigenous grad coach. There's an Indigenous support. So they can go and, use those people when needed. So with what we've done here, and what we will do is, for example, we've had the York Durham School Board reach out and ask us, Marsha, the way of building community in our classrooms isn't working right now. We want to use an Indigenous perspective of how you build community with using circles. So what I thought out to reach out to the Badabin program, because they are a platform of using circles and restorative justice to build community and keep community and support, and then bring people back in, because you're not like a one and done. Nobody's ever a one and done, right? You make mistakes. We're all human. We make mistakes, and we got to know, and we have to let everybody know that they're supported, and you can you can become a better person and get over those mistakes. So we've used Badabin workers to help help talk about the restorative justice system and how they use circles and how it could be successful within a classroom.
Okay, so even though the teachers have gone off to university and become teachers, doesn't mean they're taught anything about First Nations education, way of being, or way of learning. Am I right?
Yes. Yeah.
And what is your background in education, Marsha?
So I have long been a babysitter of Rama since I was probably 10. I worked my way through high school and became a recreation worker for about 4 or 5 years. And then I obtained my Bachelor of Arts in Native Studies. And from there, went on to York University and completed my teacher's education. I had worked at the Manjikaning-Kandassan Elementary School for 12 years. And this is when I decided to take a leave to come and work with the Ogemawahj Tribal Council to like a change and to try something different out. Like I've been through the curriculum. I love the curriculum. I love teaching our students, but I kind of felt there's something pulling at me saying, there's something more that you need to find out about our education system. So I've been here just over a year, so 13 years in.
Okay, good, thank you. Also, I think about the school board, for instance. I know that the Simcoe County School Board saves a spot for someone from an Indigenous community. And I think the Simcoe County Board has, for one period of time, somebody from Christian Island, then it switches to somebody from Rama, goes back and forth, and that's been going on for decades. So that the people sitting around that table dealing with budget and very high level things to do with thousands of students get an idea of what that Native person brings to the table as well. So this is basically, would you say, Marsha, this is a long-standing problem that our kids have been in the education system, the mainstream education system, for decades. And they may not be learning in the best way that is best for them. And the people who are teaching them may not understand who they are as a First Nations child.
Yeah, for sure. This is an issue. It has been an issue that has come up even in our education advisory circles, where the grade 11 English credit course is being looked at because it's being taught as an Indigenous curriculum course, but there's no Indigenous background behind it. So how would you know how to communicate, convey, and teach that thoroughly and with, with meaning without the background? So that's one issue that's happening right now. We know all across the Ministry of Education, curriculum is being looked at, and curriculum is being changed, I guess, and it's being advocated for that there needs to be more Indigenous voice and Indigenous perspective from a genuine Indigenous resource.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So I think about, for instance, my grandson who's in grade 4, and he takes science. And he said to me, we're going out in the bush and we're going to look at plants and see how they heal us. And we have a butterfly in our classroom. And before that, he was in a cocoon, those types of things. Those are standard things that we as Indigenous people would have taught our kids long before we sat them in a seat in a school, correct?
Yes, for sure. I can see the changes that are coming within our school system because we have, we have people there that respect those ways, respect the Indigenous ways, and they're reaching out to our communities who can come in and teach us these ways, because we need to be taught how to survive in the bush, how to, for example, identify plants, how to identify poison ivy, to stay away from it. But yeah, land-based learning is on the rise as a trend. It just hasn't become mandatory, I guess, which should be in all of our curriculum.
And I know a lot of this work you're doing and others are doing was occurring long before Truth and Reconciliation. We've been fighting for this with the province, with the feds, with the school boards forever. And now finally we're beginning to see some change. Would that be correct?
Oh yeah, there's, we just signed with the United Nations, the 10-year of Indigenous languages. So from that, hopefully a lot more funding will be put into the language reclamation. There's, on all levels, the Anishinaabe Nation. I had recently gone out to the Anishinaabe Assembly of First Nations, where all chiefs from all over Canada, these are common goals for each and every one of us, each and every First Nation, that our post-secondary funding is up to par, and that we're able to go out and buy groceries. Our students are able to go out and afford that and have that funding for them. For example, we have enough funding to hire a language teacher, a digitizer, an illustrator. Our language funding, I believe, is works out to be, $30,000, $40,000 per Ontario, per First Nation, where the French immersion education system is $1 billion system. So there's this difference right here, and we need to come up here slowly, but okay, it's not there yet.
Did you say billion with a B, not M?
B.
Billion. So that French language in Ontario, they put $1 billion into it, and they put a few 10,000s into Indigenous languages.
I think it's like a $13 million budget divided between maybe 134 First Nations. That works out to how many thousands of dollars. So there is a huge difference.
Oh, no wonder our children aren't speaking the language. I mean, we have so few speakers as it is, and then trying to inject it into the school. A lot of our speakers are quite elderly. And,
Yes.
you know, and 80s, we can't sit them in the classroom with a bunch of 8-year-olds. And also, when you look at the school system in general, they don't have an undergraduate degree. So should they even be teaching the children? That's another problem, right?
Yes, those are some of the obstacles that we are trying to get around, and some of the issues that are being brought to those, those ministries and the higher ups, that they shouldn't need, if they are speaking, if they are fluent speakers, obviously they need some management teaching skill, but they shouldn't need that 4-year graduate program where it's going to take them 6 years to even get into the school.
Right, and then they'll be 80.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thanks. Okay, I want you to look ahead to the future, Marsha, in your job there and the things that are moving provincially and nationally in Indigenous education. Look ahead 10 years, and what do you see?
Well, it's very hard to get a lot of things going and keeping those things going. Like, for example, I'm putting together a language gathering, and everybody's for it, but you have to make sure those people even want to come, right? You have to get everybody, and coming out of COVID and the pandemic as well, not everybody's used to just gathering all at once again. But an important goal for me is we need to connect our elders with our students. Again, there needs to be a connection, because that disconnect is there. And that probably has a big effect on, the respect for the language, respect for the culture, and the teachings that our children are learning. They need to learn them from our elders. And we don't have, like you said, we don't have a lot of elders left that can do that. So now is the time to get that done. You want to do it now, but your turtle pace. But for the future, I hope to see that. And we're starting to see land-based additional qualification. Teaching Ojibwe 1 and 2 as an AQ as teachers. So teachers who are already educated can go and do that. Just those kinds of programs that need to come in. And people are slowly wanting those programs to come, but it takes a long time and a lot of work and a lot of push that everybody needs to be in on.
Okay, you used another short form there again. You teacher, you AQ.
And AQ is an additional qualification. So right now, once I got into teaching, I started to take my math specialist, where you focus in on teaching primary and junior math, and what are the important things about that, and that leads up to being a specialist within teaching primary junior mathematics. So you can take an AQ1, AQ2, and then you become a specialist. So it's just additional qualifications that kind of move you up and give you the expertise to be in that school.
Okay, so when you go to school and do your undergrad, then you do your teachers in university, and you go off to teach whatever grade it is. You can find something you like or you're good at, like math or history or science or whatever, and then you have to go back to school to work on those subjects. Am I right?
So you can take those while you're working over the summer. So I think they're usually 6 to 8 weeks. So they'll last, you can take a course over the summer. You can take 2 if you want, if you're you know, if that's what you want to do all summer. But I think I took one per summer and then one during the school year where I could obtain my specialist, where I was the lead of the math program and gain that experience.
Okay, so that's a big commitment for somebody to do. So
Yes.
somebody become a specialist in Indigenous learning, Indigenous education. Is that one of your options?
Yeah, so I have intermediate Indigenous studies. So that qualifies me to go into grade 7 and grade 8 and teach that subject, or part of that within, it would probably be contained within the history part of grade 7 and grade 8. So the Indigenous studies part of that program.
Okay. All right. Well, that's progress. There was sure nothing like that a couple of decades ago. And I think as well about when I went off to university, which is long, long time ago, back when we were writing on stone tablets, but Indian affairs, and people have this idea that Native people go off to school and everything's paid for. They can live in a condo and they can have pizza every night. But I can tell you that back then I got $66 a week. That was my sponsorship, and my board, that's a place to sleep, that's not food, was $39 a week. So I had to get to school, I had to eat, I had to have clothes. I came home once in a while. It certainly didn't cut it. So that idea that our education is free and unlimited and you don't even have to do anything is totally false. So can you back me up on that, Marsha?
Yeah, so when I went to university, I did a lot of it from living at home. So I was fortunate enough to do that. But I know that like a semester, just enrolling in a course is probably up over the 6,000 mark, 6,000 mark, just to be enrolled in that course. And that's not including residence, if you're going to residence, your food, you know, all your utilities, if you have your own phone, all of that stuff. So you don't get extra money for a lot of that. You don't even get, for example, my son he had 2 courses he was going to choose. It was either firefighting, which was $16,000 for the whole year, or construction technology. Well, he wasn't going to be supported for all of the firefighting because it was too much money. So he would have to put in his own or follow through with OSAP, where he would have to pay that back.
Yeah, we do have a long ways to go in education, Marsha. And I, for one, am glad you're sitting there at Ogemawahj looking at the overview of what can go on and helping do that negotiating. I want to thank you very much for being a guest on Indigenous Voices today. And I think we've hit a lot of topics that people who are watching this have no idea about. It's another way for them to learn about us. Ogemawahj.
Ogemawahj, Sherry. Thank you for having me.